Welcome to Married to the Boss.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back.
Hello, everybody.
We are glad to be back. Some time off last week. And this week, perhaps this time, perhaps it's not, we're talking about time management. So last week, we managed to squeeze in some time to celebrate our anniversary. So we did. We had fun.
That's called time management.
Yes, that is time management. Yeah, we managed to squeeze in time to celebrate.
Right. It wasn't an anniversary day, it was an anniversary week.
Yes, it was so nice. And I know you did not tune in to hear about my anniversary week, but it was wonderful.
Yes, it was.
I'm still trying to come down to touch the ground from all of that wonderful.
If they only knew you.
Yes. Anyways, so this week we're talking, as I mentioned, about effective time management. Got my notes here. And we're going to start out with some topics. And I didn't know if you wanted to get us going or if you wanted me to get us going. How did you want to?
I can get us going if you want me to do that.
I like it. Yes, when you do that. So why don't we, please?
Okay. So we're going to start out with, we really want to share with you some real experiences from our end in regards to time management. And when you own your own business and you're a couple, I can't stress enough how important time management is, because it's not, if you're just working in an office, that's a different time management than working with your spouse. And I'm sure you can understand that. So it really starts the same way, except your time management is much, much more important. And if you didn't think that there were enough hours in the day, just you working in your office, there's definitely not enough hours in the day when you're working with your spouse and in the office. So think about 10 times from just working by yourself or having a staff or working with your spouse. Time management is very, very, very important. You have to, we just started out with the podcast saying that we had to use time wisely last week during our anniversary. And you have to squeeze that in.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that we have a really fast-paced life.
Yes.
Anybody that knows us knows that we like to keep things interesting by constantly doing something. We're just busy people. That's why we are good entrepreneurs. So we had to force ourselves to take the time out to celebrate us. And because we work so hard, we decided to really take the time out.
Yeah, so you have to put your priorities in order. I don't know how else to say it more directly, but your priority, as we said from the very first podcast, is your marriage.
Yes.
Right?
Very true.
So we had to do that last week. So I want to kind of break it down into when you're talking about not having a lot of hours in a day, that these are the things that you have to really prioritize. And you have to separate at work, you have to separate, the personal from the business. Mm-hmm. So, managing projects is ongoing. You have your projects, mm-hmm. I have my projects, right? Meeting deadlines. You have your deadlines, mm-hmm. I have my deadlines. Producing results, you got to get your stuff done, I've got to get my stuff done. And then the fourth thing is that, part of not having enough hours in the day, you got to know when to cut it off, mm-hmm. right? So starting in the day, if we start at 7 in the morning, how many times do we have discussions? We want to stop by 5, right. Get home and hopefully start cooking by 5:30, eat by 6, and not eat too late, because eating too late is not healthy. So it's all those things in regards to time management.
And that's a good point too. What I normally do in order to get all of the things that I have to get done, excuse me, in squeeze in one day's time is I start out my day with a to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
To-do list for me, not everybody likes doing that, but for me, that works. So I start out with a to-do list. Once I write out or spell out what the things that I have to get done for that day are, then I order them in whichever is more important first,
Mm-hmm.
with the least important last. And I set my mind to understand that I'm not going to be able to get all of them done. I mean, reality is I'm not going to be able to get all of it done. So if something breaks the flow of my productivity in the day, I set my mind that not everything is a crisis. So if I can do only one thing in the day, I put that first, and I aim to make sure that I get that done. And if I do nothing else for the rest of the day, I don't sweat it. I don't sweat it, because it is what it is, and that helps me get through the day and then start the next day. I start it over the same way. I start with my to-do list, and I put the second item that I didn't get to the day before as my number one, and I just rinse and repeat.
And you're going to go through the day where at the end of the day, you're going to say, I didn't get anything done. I mean, you've heard me say that 100 times. And you did get some things done, but it's that big priority that's at the top of that list that you really want to try to get done in that particular day. Because her to-do list, she's extremely organized. I'm not as organized. She's organized in her computer. She's organized on her desk. She's organized in her head.
That's very true.
I'm not organized really in any of those other than walking into work knowing that I've got to get this one thing done today. So it's really, really, really important that, and I'm going to mention, and I'm going to close in this podcast with something that I think will resonate. So I don't want to jump to that, but I'm going to mention something at the end that's going to kind of bring it all together.
One of the things that I'd like to mention is also it's important not to allow somebody else's priority become your priority. That's critical, because I believe that there's a lot of people out there who make that mistake. I don't. Sorry, people. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes think my stuff's more important than hers, and I try to get her to wiggle a little bit, and there's zero wiggle room.
Only if it's the number one thing on my to-do list. If it matches up to my number one item, it gets done.
That's true. Stop staring at me. So just kind of moving on a little bit, it's no big secret that you have to have time management when you show up at the office. As an entrepreneur, it's absolutely essential that you take that very, very seriously.
Yes.
If you're going to shotgun it, if you've ever shot a shotgun, and I'll just use an example of a 12 gauge, BBs fly everywhere.
Spray.
And you can't do that at work. You can't get things done when you go the shotgun approach.
That's right.
It's not a secret. You have to do it, and if you're not used to it, if you haven't done it, then you need to learn it before you go into your own business.
That's right.
Would you agree?
I totally agree. That takes us into the next point that you wanted to make.
Yeah. So I lived by. It started out with the 3 Ds, but it's really now, because of things have changed over the years, it's up to the 5 Ds. But I always believed in do it, delegate it, dump it. Those were my 3 Ds.
Right. I remember those loud and clear.
I preached those things constantly, and that's what was always in my head. Either I'm going to do it, I'm going to delegate it, or I'm going to dump it. I've added a couple more Ds because of what's changed. So I've added defer it, which I don't really like deferring it, because to me that's also called procrastination, but everybody procrastinates a little bit.
Sometimes you do have to kick the can down the road.
You do have to kind of defer it, possibly the next day, the next week, right? And then the other one is delete it. My favorite. Emails come through, hit the X, later. Because if you go back with me about 20 years, I remember getting 200 emails a day back in 1999, 2000. And if you don't know how to use the delete button, if it doesn't, I'll give you an example. If it's directed to you, an email is directed to you, that doesn't mean you delete it. That means it's coming to you, somebody's looking for a response.
Maybe you do it, you defer it, you delegate it,
you move it on, right? If you're copied on the email, it's really just telling you that I'm making you aware of
it's either FYI or CYA.
Right, not looking for a response. However, you got to think right there, do you want to delete it or do you want to follow up on it? Mm-hmm. But those five words are really, really important, whether somebody's coming into your office, whether you're getting an email, whether you're getting a phone call. All of those are going to, it kind of comes down to, do I do it now? Do I do it later? Do I never do it? So that's how I really got through so many phone calls, so many emails, so many meetings. I remember my brother asked me once, well, how do you run the company? Well, it's difficult to run the company when you're getting that many emails, that many phone calls, and you got meetings and you got staff coming into your office.
Yeah. Very,
very, very challenging. That's why this particular podcast on effective time management is very important. Yeah. And we do have a little bit of experience.
I would like to park on the point of delegating. I believe that there's people out there that really don't know how to effectively delegate. It's easy to do it. Obviously, you're only looking at yourself. It's easy to dump it, and it's easy to say you're going to delegate it. But not too many people know how to properly delegate a task. And I say that from experience because I've seen people improperly delegate. And what does that look like? Well, obviously, you could be kind of really rude about it, and most people are rude. I've seen a lot of rudeness in the office. Well, not in our company because we just don't allow it, but in other companies where we have found ourselves, we've seen a lot of rudeness.
Absolutely.
So I think that in order to properly delegate it, I think it's important to understand that you have to do it nicely. If you do it nice, people are going to want to do things for you. You and I have been very blessed in that we have a track record that people want to do things for us. And people want to do things for us not because we are rude, mean, we're not very heavy with our hand when we are delegating things. We're nice about it, and our staff knows it. But we're not just nice. I say that because we're very clear in what we need done. We're very clear in when it needs to be done, and we're also the type of people that we like to communicate why it needs to be done. We believe that it's important to keep our staff aware as to why it's important to get something done. When you get their buy-in, they take it and run with it. And also the other thing too that I'm throwing you into the mix.
Of course.
Feel free to say, keep me out of it, right. But I know how you are. Is that we also keep our finger on the pulse, meaning that we don't just delegate and forget it. That's right. We always make sure that we stay on top of the person or the group that we delegated the task to, and we keep our finger on the pulse. And we do that via different methods, whether it's weekly meetings, daily meetings, emails, phone calls, whatever the case may be. Just keep your finger on the pulse.
Can I add to that?
Sure.
When you delegate, don't think that you're just handing it off and you don't have to worry about it, follow up with it, make sure it gets done. That's not delegation. That's just saying you do it and I expect you to get it done, and that doesn't work in business. You're not going to have the respect coming back to you as an owner. So it's you delegate it, you follow up with any questions, you good with it? No, I've got it, great. No, I've got this question. Okay, I'm glad I came in here because you probably wouldn't have done anything for the next 2 hours. So that word delegation does not stop with just passing it over or shuffling things to somebody else.
That's so true. That's so true. And the other thing that needs to be also said is that in addition to keeping up with them and getting keeping your finger on the pulse and getting updates on the status of where things are, it's also important to remind them ahead of time that the deadline is approaching or whatever the case might be. And I'm adamant about that, especially from a project management standpoint in my field of work, that even as a project manager in my past, that it's so critical that in order to make the deadline, you have to make sure that everybody's aware of the goal line. So if there are some things that are going to interfere with that meeting that deadline, that needs to be addressed before you get to the point of that.
Very, 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 very important.
Which leads me to my all-time favorite rule about delegation, and I make it really clear, and you chuckle when I say this, from the very beginning, from the onset that I delegate any task to anyone, I always make sure that I'm clear in letting them know that I'm giving them all of the tools, all the information, and I'm making myself available to answer questions. And I always make sure that I remind them that there are no excuses for meeting the deadline. And that's very important. For me personally, to give them my expectation up front. So I make it really clear that no excuses are allowed.
That's actually going to come up in one of the next podcasts, is that when having the right tools, again, don't just delegate it and they don't have a tool available to them to make it happen. You know, if it's writing something versus creating, let's say, a video, they have to have the right software, the right tools. Yeah. Otherwise, they're going to fail. It's a very good point.
Agreed.
The last thing
we need to close.
Yeah, the last thing that I've also, again, using this podcast from real experience and things that we've said, things we've shared with our staff, things we've even shared with ourselves. Mayra heard this many years ago, and she's heard me say it many times. And I learned this when you're selling something on straight commission, and you have no guaranteed paycheck coming in. I learned really young that you have to pay for yourself every day. So if I go,
tell you, that's one of my favorite things that you've ever taught me in business.
It is
to pay for myself. Yeah.
Oh, well, you've told me that, but you never touched me at the same time.
No, sorry.
That's okay. Now I lost my train of thought. See,
that's what you do to me all the time.
I have a short train, and you just knocked me right off the tracks.
He does that to me all the time.
Okay, now I know. I think I know where I was going with it.
You were talking about me
paying for yourself.
Yeah, paying for yourself.
When you walk into the office, you have to be that one thing that's on your list to get done. If you get that done by the end of the day, you may not have brought any money in, but you felt like you did something so big enough today that you paid for yourself.
That's sense of accomplishment.
Hopefully that makes sense to those of you that are listening, because I still till today do not like finishing a day where I didn't pay for myself somehow. And again, it doesn't have, when I say pay for myself, it doesn't mean that we brought in more money. It has nothing to do with money. Money is a big thing. Yeah, I want to bring in more money. I want to sell. That's not just the whole thing that I'm talking about. You cannot leave the office the other day, get home, eat, you got a chip on your shoulders, you go to bed, you aren't sleeping because you didn't get something done that you should have gotten done. And that is, if you take anything away from this podcast, pay for yourself every day as an entrepreneur. So
as I said, when I rudely interrupted your train of thought.
It wasn't rudely, it was a nice touch.
So. No, I was referring to when I just jumped in and interjected and I just blurted out the sense of accomplishment. So we were finishing our podcast by saying that it's important to have that sense of accomplishment by making sure that you use your time wisely.
Absolutely. Very important.
Especially as an entrepreneur.
You have to do it as an entrepreneur. Actually, you have to do it, I don't care where you're working.
Sure.
You have to do it, but as an entrepreneur, you have to do it, I don't want to say flawlessly, but you got to be very disciplined and focused on that to-do list that you have and the things that you have to get done in order to grow your business.
Very true.
Well, thanks for joining us today on effective time management.
Yes.
And there's a lot of information out there about it, but we really try to share an overview with you on our success in our business life.
Yes. So I guess that's a wrap.
Have a good one, everybody.
Bye.
That's this week's episode of Married to the Boss podcast.